Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take, well, a whole stack of research biographies, articles, film analysis, and really dig into the complex structure beneath the icons. Find out what makes them tick. And today, maybe the ultimate icon, Marilyn Monroe. Our mission is to look past that, the blonde bombshell image everyone knows.
That's a caricature.
Exactly. And find the sharp businesswoman, the serious artist, and maybe understand the trauma that really fueled that incredibly intense but short burst of stardom.
Yeah, and you have to start with the scale, don't you? I mean, just the raw numbers. She was a top-billed star for, what, about a decade?
Roughly, yeah.
But in that time, her films pulled in $200 million, which today, you adjust that, it's easily over $2 billion.
Wow, that's staggering.
It really is. And the American Film Institute ranks her sixth greatest female screen legend. That kind of impact, it's not an accident. It's constructed. It's a performance of femininity, yes, but also ambition. And maybe even rebellion.
Absolutely. So, okay, our job today is to look at the person she started as Norma Jeane Mortenson and trace the steps, sometimes really strategic, sometimes, frankly, heartbreaking steps she took to become Marilyn Monroe. It's more than history, isn't it? It's almost like survival tactics, coping with just immense instability. Okay, let's unpack this early life. Los Angeles, 1926. The thing that just leaps out from all the sources about Norma Jeane's childhood is, well, the lack of permanence. It feels like she was always searching for something solid.
That's exactly it. And it's the root, really, of so much later on, the anxiety, the need for control. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, she just wasn't equipped for motherhood, financially, mentally.
Right.
Gladys suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and by January 1934, she had to be committed, institutionalized.
And Norma Jeane was only 7.
7 years old, and just like that, she becomes a ward of the state.
Ward of the state, that means foster homes, right? A constant shuffling. I read about the Bollanders, these sort of evangelical foster parents.
Yes, them. And later, her mother's friend, Grace McKee Goddard. But there were also long stretches in institutions. Specifically, the Los Angeles Orphans' Home, number 2, Holly Grove.
An orphanage. Even if some people remembered it okay, for her, it must have felt like abandonment.
Pure abandonment. And this constant moving, this psychological whiplash, it started showing up physically, behaviorally. The sources mentioned she developed quite a bad stutter.
Yeah, I read that.
And became very withdrawn. She never had what you or I would think of as a stable home. Not really.
It's interesting, though, how that instability kind of fueled her dreams. Her foster families, maybe just to keep her busy, they sent her to the movies a lot.
A lot. And it wasn't just fun, was it? It was like a lifeline.
An escape.
An antidote, she called it, to a world she saw as grim, really grim. She figured out if she sat right in the very front row, the screen just filled her vision. Total escape. A way to reinvent things.
So the thinking was, if life is grim, don't just watch the fantasy.
Become it, exactly. That's the first, maybe subconscious, but fundamental strategic move. Her whole life became about escaping Norma Jeane.
And on top of the instability, there was real trauma.
Yeah.
Biographers seem pretty convinced she was sexually abused, possibly by a lodger, maybe the foster parent. George Atkinson's a name that comes up, around age 8.
Yes. And that's not just some footnote, That specific trauma, her psychoanalyst talked about it later, it gets tangled up with her struggles with self-worth, with emotional stability throughout her life.
It connects directly to her acting process later, doesn't it? When you think about method acting, digging into past pain for authenticity.
Oh, absolutely. The psychological cost must have been immense. She was essentially, maybe unknowingly at first, being asked to revisit and, in a way, monetize the very trauma she was desperate to escape.
So fast forward to when she's 16. Her marriage isn't really about romance, is it? It's a defense mechanism.
Totally pragmatic. It's 1942. The Goddards, her foster parents at the time, they're moving to West Virginia. And under California law back then, that meant Norma Jeane faced one thing: back to the orphanage. Unless she wasn't a ward of the state anymore. The only way out was marriage.
So the solution: marry the neighbor's son, James Doherty, factory worker, 5 years older, just after she turned 16, June 1942.
A calculated escape. It got her out of the system, gave her a bit of stability, some autonomy. But her own words about the marriage: dying of boredom.
Right, so the moment she felt safe, that ambition, that drive to escape the grimness, it just kicked right back in. She needed more.
Okay, next phase. This is where she starts to actively shed Norma Jeane. World War II is kind of the trigger, right? Doherty gets shipped out.
Overseas.
And she ends up working, of all places, at the radioplane company. A munitions factory, building drones, essentially. Sounds completely unglamorous.
But that's where the spark happens. Late 1944, this photographer, David Conover, from the Army Air Force's 1st Motion Picture Unit.
Right, the FMPU. He's sent there to take pictures of women working for the war effort, morale boosters, and he spots her. Pure chance he was there. But her reaction, that was strategy.
She quits the factory almost instantly, 1945. Signs with the Blue Book Model Agency. And the sources really stress this. They immediately pushed her towards pinup modeling.
Yeah.
Not high fashion. Why is that so key?
Well, think about the time. Post-war America. The pinup market was booming. It catered directly to that returning male days. By going into pinups, she was consciously choosing the sex symbol route, using her looks as currency. It was probably the fastest, most direct path to getting notice.
And then comes the physical transformation.
Yeah.
Which was like really deliberate, straightening the naturally curly brown hair.
Light brown, yeah. And dyeing it that platinum blonde, that iconic color, and then the name.
Name change, August 46, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, the Marilyn apparently came from a Fox executive, thought she looked like Marilyn Miller, the Broadway star. And Monroe was her choice, her mother's maiden name. Which is kind of poignant, isn't it? A little nod back to the instability she was leaving, even as she built this totally new persona.
And this drive, this ambition, it just steamrolled her personal life. She divorces Doherty in September 46. He didn't approve of the career path.
No. The marriage that got her out of the orphanage became just another thing holding her back. She had to cut it loose.
Her commitment was absolute. Because even when those first studio contracts fizzled out, she had brief deals with Fox, then Columbia.
Yeah, she was basically dropped. A failed starlet, really.
But she didn't give up. She worked as a pacer. What is that?
Basically dancing behind the scenes to keep extras in rhythm, whatever work she could get. And she was taking serious acting classes, the Actors Laboratory Theater. She wasn't just relying on looks, she was working on the craft.
And that work started to pay off. 1950. Small but noticeable parts in really good films. The Asphalt Jungle, All About Eve.
Tiny part in All About Eve, but unforgettable. These roles were crucial. They showed she wasn't just a model. Critics started noticing. People point to Asphalt Jungle as the moment she began that shift, from movie model to serious actress. She wanted the credibility and the fame.
But then, March 1952, potential disaster strikes.
Yeah.
Those nude calendar photos from 1949 leak out.
Yes. The calendar scandal. And this is where you see her shift from maybe being lucky to being strategically brilliant with the media. She'd posed back in 49, used the name Mona Monroe because she was flat broke, needed $50.
Right. So when it breaks, the studio instinct would be denial, cover up.
Shame. Yeah. Damage control. But Marilyn and the studio kind of went along with her instinct here. They did the opposite. They admitted it flat out.
Spun it. Right.
Yeah.
Emphasized she was broke, desperate. The narrative became, I had to do it to survive.
Genius. Absolutely genius. It did two things. One, it killed the photos as blackmail material. You can't expose a secret everyone already knows.
Yeah.
And two, it generated this wave of public sympathy. America loved that story. The struggling girl forced into a tough spot. Result, instant boost. Top billing in her next movie, cover of Life magazine. Talk of Hollywood. The scandal literally made her bigger.
Turned a massive liability into pure leverage. Incredible. And right after that, she digs deeper into the acting, starts studying with Michael Chekhov.
Yeah, she's actively pushing back against the dumb blonde thing almost before it fully solidifies. Look at her roles in 52. Clash by Night, she's playing a working-class woman in a fish cannery. Good reviews, too. Hollywood Reporter called it an excellent interpretation.
And Don't Bother to Knock, that was a serious thriller. She played a mentally unstable babysitter, a really dark, dramatic role.
Trying to show range,
Yep.
Definitely. But this pressure, the intensity of trying to prove herself, combined with all that background trauma, this is where the stories about her being difficult start to surface.
Right, the reputation.
And we need to be careful here. It wasn't just, diva behavior. The lateness, forgetting lines, needing endless retakes, relying heavily on her coach, Natasha Light.
Yeah.
It stemmed from crippling stage fright, sources say. Perfectionism, rock-bottom self-esteem, all symptoms of that deep anxiety, the terror of failing, maybe the terror of being exposed as Norma Jeane again.
She needed everything to be perfect because the fantasy, the Marilyn persona, felt so fragile.
Exactly. Any crack in the facade felt catastrophic. And the sources also mentioned she hated the lack of control on a film set. The director's in charge there. It wasn't like a photo shoot where she could control the image completely.
Ah, interesting distinction.
Yeah. The set was the system telling her what to do. The photo shoot was her telling the system what to see. This conflict, plus chronic insomnia, that's when the reliance on barbiturates, amphetamines, really begins. A coping mechanism that sadly stuck with her.
So 1953, Marilyn Monroe is now a full-blown phenomenon.
Yeah.
Huge box office draw. That trademark look, the makeup, is locked in with Alan Whitey Snyder. Right.
Mm-hmm. And the films from that year really cement the screen persona. Niagara, hugely sexualized. They even marketed it based on her walk, that famous hip-swaying walk. There's that one long shot.
Nearly 30 seconds, yeah.
Women's clubs protested it, called it immoral, which of course just made more people want to see it.
Guaranteed hit. And then Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. These are the absolute peak dumb blonde movies.
Mm-hmm.
But watching her, especially in Blondes, singing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, it doesn't feel just dumb. There's a wink there. It's almost parody.
It's performing dumbness, which is actually incredibly smart. She's playing with the stereotype, using it, but also kind of undermining it from within. Like you said, a gender trickster. The sad part is a lot of people, critics included, just saw the surface. They missed the act.
Which made it harder for her to get those serious roles she wanted.
Exactly. And in the middle of all this, December 53, Hugh Hefner uses her image, those old calendar shots, for the very first Playboy, cover and centerfold.
Without her consent.
And no pay. No consent for that specific use, no pay. It just shows her image was now public domain, basically, making millions for others while she's still fighting for control herself.
And the media storm just intensifies when she marries Joe DiMaggio, January 54. Baseball hero, movie goddess, front page news everywhere.
Biggest celebrity wedding imaginable, but it barely lasted. 9 months.
Why so short?
Just a fundamental clash. Her explosive sexualized fame versus his kind of quiet traditionalism. Sources say he was deeply uncomfortable with her image, became intensely jealous, even abusive.
Physically abusive.
Indications point that way, yes. And the tension really peaks right after the wedding. She goes off to Korea alone, USO tour.
Right, singing for the troops.
Over 60,000 Marines. She felt this incredible direct connection with her audience, this huge wave of adoration, something DiMaggio couldn't really compete with or maybe understand, kind of sealed the marriage's fate.
And the final nail in the coffin comes, ironically, during the filming of arguably her most iconic moment, the subway grate scene for The 7-Year Itch.
That's 1955. And remember, she didn't even want to do that film initially. Fox basically forced her into it after suspending her for refusing another movie.
The studio head, Daryl Zanuck, apparently really disliked her personally, wanted to keep her in that blonde box.
So they staged this subway grate scene in Manhattan. Huge publicity stunt, thousands of onlookers, press, flashbulbs going off like crazy, her skirt blowing out.
An iconic image is born.
But for DiMaggio, watching this, his wife being put on display like that, it was the last straw. Huge fight back at the hotel, explosive. Days later, she files for divorce, cites mental cruelty. The image that made her a global icon simultaneously destroyed her marriage, the price of fame.
But even as Fox's biggest star, she's still underpaid compared to her box office power, still typecast. And this is the moment she decides enough. The actress becomes the businesswoman.
She needed control, real control, and she wasn't going to get it by playing nice. So after finishing 7-Year Itch, late 54, she doesn't just refuse roles. She leaves Hollywood, goes to New York.
And starts her own company.
Marilyn Monroe Productions, MMP, with Milton Green, the photographer.
That must have sent shockwaves through the studio system.
Oh, huge. Sources call it instrumental in eventually breaking that old system. Stars locked into those long, restrictive contracts. Marilyn showed there was another way.
How did she force their hand, legally?
She essentially sued Fox, claimed they hadn't fulfilled their contract by offering her suitable roles, declared she was tired of the same old sex roles. By forming MMP, she was saying, I control my projects now, my directors, my schedule. It set a massive precedent, if Marilyn could do it.
Others would follow. Brando, Newman.
Exactly, demanding more power, more money. The press mocked her at first, of course, compared her to Jane Mansfield, but she was deadly serious. She spent 1955 not making movies, but educating herself.
Right, she enrolled at the Actors Studio, studying method acting with Lee Strasberg.
And Paula Strasberg, his wife, became her personal coach. And at the same time, she starts intensive psychoanalysis, which is key.
How do those two things connect? The acting and the therapy?
Well, method acting often asks you to pull on your own deep emotional memories, right? Your own pain, to make the performance authentic.
Okay.
Now imagine doing that when your past is Norma Jeane's past. Abandonment, abuse. Dredging that up constantly for your job. It's incredibly risky, emotionally destructive. The psychoanalysis wasn't just for healing. It was almost a tool to access those very feelings the Strasbergs wanted her to use. Her ambition and her mental health were in constant conflict.
Wow, that's a
It
disc.
really was. But the corporate gamble paid off. Fox needed her back badly. By the end of 55, they caved. New 7-year contract, $400,000 for 4 films. And crucially, approval over projects, directors, even cinematographers. She'd gone from ward of the state to ward of the studio to CEO of her own career.
So 1956 marks this new era. She legally changes her name to Marilyn Monroe, makes it official. Even Time magazine has to admit she's a shrewd businesswoman.
Recognition.
And then another huge personal shift. She marries Arthur Miller, the playwright, intellectual heavyweight.
Talk about a PR whirlwind. The press went nuts. Egghead weds hourglass. That was the famous headline.
Yeah, I remember that.
For her, it was clearly another attempt to gain something she felt she lacked: intellectual respectability, maybe a sense of grounding, family. She even converted to Judaism, aligning with Miller's background. Identified as a Jewish atheist, interestingly enough.
Did that conversion have other consequences? I feel like I read something.
It did, internationally. Egypt banned all her films, saw the conversion as support for Israel. Shows how even her personal choices had this global ripple effect.
Wow. Okay, so her first film under this powerful new contract is Bus Stop.
Yeah.
1956. And this was her chance to prove the fight was worth it.
And she nailed it. Deliberately chose a non-glamorous role. Cherie, the saloon singer, adopted an Ozark accent, insisted on looking less polished. She wanted to act, not just be looked at.
In a critic?
They were stunned, blown away. The Saturday Review said her performance effectively dispels once and for all the notion that she is merely a glamour personality. Golden Globe nomination. She proved her point. She was a serious actress.
Professional triumph, but then personal difficulty right after. Her first independent production through MMP, The Prince and the Showgirl, co-starring and directed by Laurence Olivier.
Oh, that set was famously tense. Olivier, Sir Lawrence, the great Shakespearean actor, he apparently couldn't stand her method approach. Hated having Paula Strasberg, her coach, on set all the time.
Pure clash of styles.
And cultures. British theatrical royalty versus Hollywood method. His attitude was reportedly incredibly condescending. The famous line attributed to him is telling her, all you have to do is be sexy.
Ouch. After everything she fought for.
Devastating for her. And her response. She became difficult, deliberately late, holding up production. She later said something like, if you don't respect your artists, they can't work well. It was partly defense, partly maybe proving she still had power. Despite all that friction, she still got a BAFTA nomination for the performance.
This period, though, it seems like the personal toll was getting heavier. Miscarriages, health problems, the reliance on pills increasing.
Definitely escalating. Managing the stress, the insomnia, the physical pain from conditions like endometriosis. Yet somehow, she follows this difficult period with one of her greatest triumphs. Some Like It Hot, 1959.
A masterpiece. So funny, so smart about gender roles. Huge hit, critical acclaim. She won a Golden Globe.
But the making of it, legendary for being difficult. This is where the stories of her struggles on set really peak. The conflict between the brilliant performer and the incredibly fragile person was just right there on the surface.
The stories are wild. Dozens and dozens of takes for simple lines, forgetting dialogue constantly. They supposedly had cue cards hidden all over the set.
Yeah. And Tony Curtis's infamous quote about kissing her being like kissing Hitler, which sounds awful, but it came from the sheer frustration of doing scenes over and over and over.
But the performance is magic. How does that happen?
That's the paradox, isn't it? Billy Wilder, the director, was tearing his hair out, but he admitted it later. He said something like, anyone can remember lines, but it takes a real artist to come on the set and not know her lines and yet give the performance she did. Her perfectionism, her insecurity, it somehow fueled the magic on screen. Agonizing, but brilliant.
That internal struggle really comes to a head with her last finished film, The Misfits, 1961, written for her by Arthur Miller.
Yeah, Miller wrote it as a serious, dramatic showcase for her. A gift, supposedly. But the production itself became the backdrop for their marriage completely falling apart. Miller started an affair during filming with the set photographer Inge Morath, who he later married, and Marilyn realized with growing horror that the character Miller wrote for her, Rosalind, it was based on her, but in a really critical, almost resentful way. She felt the male roles, Gables and Cliffs, were written with much more depth and sympathy.
That must have felt like such a betrayal.
Profound betrayal. On top of that, the shoot itself was brutal Nevada desert heat. Her health was terrible gallstones, the endometriosis flared up, and her drug use, it was out of control. Sources say her makeup sometimes had to be applied while she was basically still asleep, semi-conscious from the drugs.
Just functioning must have been agony.
At one point, production had to stop for a week while she went into detox, just to get her well enough to finish. It's heartbreaking. But again, the performance. Critics now see it as maybe her deepest, her most mature interpretation. She poured all that pain, all the Norma Jeane trauma directly into Roslyn, achieved this raw authenticity, but at the cost of her own well-being.
And it's just so tragically fitting that The Misfits was the last film for both her and Clark Gable. Her divorce from Miller was finalized right after, January 61. So after the divorce, 1961 is just rough. More health problems, surgeries, treatment for depression. And there was that really scary incident where she checked herself in for psychiatric help.
Right, but ended up mistakenly placed in a high-security ward for patients with severe psychosis.
That must have been terrifying for her. Echoes of her mother's institutionalization, the orphanage.
Exactly. Deep-seated fears. Thankfully, Joe DiMaggio, they had reconnected, formed this kind of supportive friendship. He stepped in immediately, got her transferred somewhere appropriate. It shows, despite everything, he was still protective of her in some fundamental way.
She needed that support because she went right back to work. Started filming Something's Gotta Give for Fox in early '62, but it was plagued with problems from the start.
Yeah, she got sinusitis, missed days, but the timing for Fox was just awful. They were hemorrhaging money on Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra. That film's budget was spiraling out of control.
So they had no patience for delays on Marilyn's film.
None. They needed a hit, and they needed it on schedule. They started putting pressure on her publicly, implying she was faking illnesses. The relationship got really antagonistic.
And then comes the breaking point. May 1962. She takes an unapproved leave from the set.
To go sing at Madison Square Garden for President Kennedy's birthday gala.
The happy birthday, Mr. President moment, wearing that dress.
The sheer rhinestone-covered dress basically looked nude under the spotlights. It was this huge, defiant reclaiming of her star power, her sexuality, on a national stage. But for Fox, already furious, it was the last straw, utterly unprofessional in their eyes.
Did the affair rumors with JFK play into Fox's reaction?
The rumors were flying, certainly, though most reliable sources suggest a relationship was fairly casual, not some grand love affair. But the public spectacle of her singing so intimately to the president while absent from their set, that was unforgivable to the studio bosses.
So Fox fires her, June '62, and sues her for $750,000.
Yep, replaced her with Lee Remick. But then another twist showing Marilyn's power even when fired. Dean Martin, her co-star, refused to make the film with anyone else.
Really?
Pulled out, which basically shut down production. Fox was stuck. They realized pretty quickly they'd made a huge mistake. The film was probably worthless without Monroe.
So they started negotiating to get her back.
Exactly. In the final weeks of her life, it seems she was gearing up for a comeback, doing interviews, planning projects. She did that famous photo session with Bert Stern, the one called The Last Sitting, trying to control her image again, maybe on her own terms.
But she never got the chance. August 4th, 1962. She dies at home. She was only 36.
Found by her psychiatrist, Ralph Greenson, and her housekeeper, Eunice Murray. The coroner's report was clear. Acute barbiturate poisoning. Lethal levels way over the limit found in her system.
And the official cause of death.
Probable suicide. The deputy coroner, Thomas Noguchi, cited her history of depression, previous overdoses. It fit a pattern, sadly.
The impact was just immediate. Huge shockwaves. Didn't the suicide rate in L.A. spike that month?
Reportedly doubled, yeah. Her death felt personal to so many people. The funeral was small, intensely private, arranged by DiMaggio. He famously barred most of the Hollywood bigwigs, blamed them, the industry, for her death.
Of course, the conspiracy theory started almost immediately. Murder? Accidental overdose?
Oh, endlessly. They persist even today. But it's important to mention, in 1982, the LA District Attorney did a thorough review, a threshold investigation, precisely because of those theories.
And they found
no evidence of foul play, none whatsoever. Their conclusion upheld the original finding, probable suicide.
Okay, let's step back and look at the legacy. That image, it was so perfectly crafted for its time, wasn't it? Post-war America, the male gaze. A softer kind of sexuality compared to the tough dames of the 40s.
Deliberately constructed. But as we've discussed, that dumb blonde thing was the ultimate performance. She was anything but dumb.
Very smart indeed. Very tough, as biographers say. Smart enough to beat the studio system at its own game.
Using the stereotype against itself, that gender trickster idea. Right, and you see her wit in those little deflections, the Monroeisms. Like, when asked what she wore to bed, I had the radio on.
Classic. Completely sidesteps the question with humor.
Exactly. She just embodied the era in so many ways. Post-war optimism, sex seeming somehow natural and innocent, consumer culture, that populist glamour. It makes sense she's on the Smithsonian's list of the 100 most significant Americans.
And the image just endures. It keeps getting reinterpreted. Warhol, Madonna, academics study her through lenses of feminism, media, fame.
She's called the eternal shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Each generation kind of remakes her in their own image, finds something relevant. It's that tension, isn't it, between the vulnerable Norma Jeane and the powerful creation Marilyn Monroe? That's what keeps us fascinated. Hashtag tag tag outro.
So when you pull it all together, what we've seen today is, well, Marilyn Monroe was this master of creating herself, a really dedicated actress who fought for and earned critical respect, and a truly strategic businesswoman who actually helped change how Hollywood worked. It was a constant, calculated battle against the system and maybe against her own past.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leaves us with something to really chew on, doesn't it? A final thought for you, the listener. Think about this. Norma Jeane had to invent Marilyn Monroe, this larger-than-life, untouchable, sexualized persona, just to survive her own grim beginnings and the pressures of Hollywood. She fought tooth and nail to gain control over that image, and she largely succeeded. So what does it tell us about fame, about image, about us, maybe? That her biggest, most tragic fight was trying to get the world, and maybe even herself sometimes, to see past the character, to believe in the complex, ambitious, intelligent actress underneath the blonde hair and the whispery voice she created.